Survival Guide to the UK. Looking like a tourist can cost you money and pride. Looking like a local can open you up to even greater harassment. Read our Survivor's Guide, split the difference, and come away with your upper lip intact. First, getting around. Travel around the UK is relatively simple. Yes, they drive on the left, but don't be daunted. Most roads are so narrow that it doesn't make any difference which side you're on. Be prepared when driving distances of more than 20 miles. This can be epic undertakings on Britain's congested highways, but the misery of gridlocked traffic will be more than compensated for by road signs pointing to places which, with names like Ramsbottom, Dorking, and Goole, Britain has an extensive and efficient rail network, which only ever grinds to a halt when the weather turns hot, cold, or wet or dry. Tickets are expensive, but you can find cheap fares by booking 8 or 9 years in advance of travel. Second, climate. There are warm days in the UK, but you know you're in a damp country when the merest hint of sunshine is front-page news. Britain has 4 seasons, and while the transitions between them can be pleasant, each is typically as wet, grey, and cold as the last. All are considered by Brits to be ice cream weather. Whatever the climate throws at you, be prepared for endless conversations about it. This needn't be dull, since like Eskimos with snow, Brits have impressive lexicon for rain. If you hear the word mizzle, it probably means a light shower, or maybe a low-quality Snoop Dogg track. Third, royalty. Don't be dumped by Downton Abbey. Britain has come a long way since the days when ordinary folk were awestruck by aristocracy. This is a modern country where all are born equal and social rewards are based on merit. This is why few British people bothered turning up when a blue-blooded chap married his sweetheart in 2011. It's why barely anyone noticed when she gave birth a couple of years later. And it's also why no one batted an eyelid when his flame-haired brother got naked in Vegas. Okay, none of that is true. British people are as enthralled to their royal family as you are, and they're willing to see you as Wales and Kate souvenir tea towel with matching oven mitts to prove it. Fourth, history. History. Britain has so many ancient attractions, it's hard to know where to start, and if you do manage to visit all the sites of historical interest, archaeologists will simply dig up the bones of another 15th century king from under a parking lot just to annoy you. But since some Brits are only aware of 2 key dates, a French invasion in 1066 and an England Soccer World Cup victory 900 years later, you don't need to try too hard to catch up. Try visiting the northern city of York when you can wallow in 2,000 years of British history in one location. Fifth, tea. There may be coffee shops on every UK street corner, but Britain is resolutely a tea-drinking nation. Vast lakes of insipid infusions are consumed on a daily basis. Visitors will note the almost mandatory provision of a minuscule electric jug or kettle in every hotel room. It will take 4 hours to boil half a cup, but for many Brits, this is an essential lifeline. There isn't any crisis that belief can be solved with a nice cup of tea and perhaps a biscuit. When preparing tea, there are rituals to be observed. Use boiling water, and if you must resort to tea bags, always at the milk last. Failure to do so will result in such distress that it may take another cup of tea to calm everyone down again. 6. Language. Even if you are fluent in English, you may experience linguistic difficulties in the UK. Regional dialects vary extensively in the space of a few miles, resulting in bafflement even among locals. If you can't understand what a British person is saying, it's fairly safe to assume it's either A. Something about the weather, C. Climate, above, an apology. British people love apologizing. They're sorry to trouble you, sorry they can't be more helpful, sorry about the rain, and sorry about invading your country in 1762 or whenever it was. They also love apologizing when it's not even their fault. They are sorry that you bumped into them, sorry knocked them to the floor, and sorry that you're repeatedly thwacking them over the head and telling them to stop apologizing. Be warned though, it's contagious. 7. Cuisine. British bland national diet has been revolutionized by South Asian migrants whose spicy concoctions are now firm favorites sold on every high street. Meanwhile, pubs that once nourished customers with despondent sandwiches are now studded with Michelin stars. But don't be fooled. They might pretend to love fine dining, but when on the hoof, many Brits still prefer to fill their faces with offal and saturated fat. Few journeys are made within the United Kingdom that aren't catered with sausages rolls, Cornish pasties, and Scotch eggs. Visitors troubled by the sight of greasy meat should also be warned of the 3 words that will strike fear, if not full-blown cardiovascular seizures into their hearts, for English breakfast. 8. Television. Be sure to take time out from your travels to sample a few hours of British television, but seek not the polished period dramas that are easily exported to other countries. Where British TV excels is in its celebration of the lives of ordinary, dare we say boring, citizens. The UK's 3 most popular soaps focus not on the beautiful or the damned, but on normal folk engaged in humdrum tasks like buying cheese, arguing about poetry, or tending to their farms. Talking of farms, every spring since 2010, British television has dedicated numerous prime-time hours to some of the best reality TV ever conceived. Leave coverage of the annual lambing season keep up with that. Northwestern University special football uniforms have some seen red. The Northwestern University football team has come on hard times. After an impressive start to the season, it's in the midst of a 5-game losing streak. And this week, the school is caught up in a controversy about, of all things, a uniform that some say appears to be splattered in blood. The Wildcats will play Michigan Wolverines at home on November 16th, just 5 days after Veterans Day. The university teamed up with Under Armour and the Wounded Warrior Project to design a special flag-themed set of uniforms for the game. 1/10 of the proceeds from the sale of replica uniforms will go to the Wounded Warrior Project, a public service organization founded by veterans to support veterans who've been wounded on duty. And after the game, uniforms worn by players on the field would be auctioned off, and 100% of that money goes to WWP. An Under Armour spokesman said the program could raise upwards of $100,000 for wounded warriors. But some don't like the design of the special uniforms. A blogger on the Deadspin website wrote, "But isn't flag covered in blood a little on the nose for something honoring a group that operates programs for injured veterans?" The writer is referring to red streaks on the white stripes of the flag that at first glance may seem like blood. The founder of Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America, Paul Rickhoff, tweeted Monday, "Northwestern honors wounded troops with gore-porn football uniforms." He called it "not okay." But a closer look at the blue and white side of uniform shows similar blue streaks, which no one could mistake for blood. Northwestern Paul Kennedy, Assistant Athletic Director for Communication, said in a statement that the streaks of red and blue represent a distressed pattern on both the stars and stripes that was inspired by the appearance of a flag that has flown proudly over a long period of time. Still, the university did acknowledge that some people may not realize what the streaks are. "We apologize for any misinterpretation," Kennedy said. Northwestern's head football coach talked about the special uniforms at his weekly press conference. "We are honored to partner with Under Armour and the Wounded Warrior Project on the 16th as we get ready here to play Michigan this week," Pat Fitzgerald said. "More importantly, I think, a great statement from our program and Under Armour to support those that are out there defending our country." Under Armour's chief spokesman, Matt Mitchell, told CNN on Tuesday that the company designed the special uniforms, and both Northwestern and the Wounded Warriors projects were able to see the design and request changes neither did. He said, "People are entitled to their opinion, but he sought to assure that those who object there's nothing on the uniforms that is meant to represent blood. That was never the intent." Merchant said, "The last thing that we want to do is to disrespect or upset these heroes." Super Typhoon Haiyan, one of the strongest storms ever, hit central Philippines. With 25 million people in its path, Super Typhoon Haiyan, one of the strongest storms recorded on the planet, smashed into the Philippines on Friday morning. As the storm plowed across the cluster of islands in the heart of the country, 3 people were reported dead. More than 100,000 took shelter in evacuation centers, and hundreds of flights were cancelled. The storm brought tremendously powerful winds roaring ashore as it made landfall in the province of Eastern Visayas, disrupting communications with the major city in its path. With sustained winds of 315 kph and gusts as strong as 380 kph, Haiyan was probably the strongest tropical cyclone to hit land anywhere in the world in recorded history. It will take further analysis after the storm passes to establish whether it is a record. As the monster storm spun toward the Philippines on Thursday, President Benigno Aquino III warned the nation that it faced a calamity, Category 5 strength. Haiyan, known in the Philippines as Yolanda, appeared to retain much of its terrifying force as it moved west over the country, with sustained winds of 295 kph, gusts as strong as 360 kph. Haiyan's wind strength makes it equivalent to a Category 5 hurricane. Video footage from on the ground in the Philippines shows howling winds, bending palm trees, and whipping debris down deserted streets. Government Roger Mercado of Southern Leyte, a province in eastern Visayas, said Friday morning that all roads were impassable because of fallen trees. He said it was too soon to gauge the level of devastation caused by Haiyan. We don't know the extent of the damage, Mercado said. We are trying to estimate this. We are prepared, but this is really a wallop. The typhoon was forecast to churn across the central Philippines during Friday and part of Saturday before existing into the South China Sea. The storm is expected to weaken slightly as it moves across land, but forecasters predict that it will maintain super typhoon intensity throughout its passage of the islands. A super typhoon has surface winds that sustain speeds of more than 240 kph for at least a minute, according to the U.S. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Haiyan is so large in diameter that clouds from it are affecting two-thirds of the country, which stretches more than 1,850 kilometers. Tropical storm force winds are extending to 240 kilometers from the typhoon's center. Very real danger. At least 3 people, including a 1-year-old child, were reported to have been killed. The infant and another person were hit by debris in Cotabato province, and a woman in Cebu died when she was hit by a falling coconut tree, authorities said. Ahead of the typhoon's arrival, thousands of people had been relocated away from particularly vulnerable areas in Tacloban City, which is situated in the coastal area of the region that bore the initial brunt of the storm. Communications with Tacloban, which has a population of around 200,000, were disrupted after the typhoon struck. In a speech Thursday, Aquino warned residents of the calamity our countrymen will face in these coming days. Let me repeat myself, this is a very real danger, and we can mitigate and lessen its effects if we use the information available to prepare, he said. Authorities have aircraft ready to respond, and officials have placed relief supplies in the areas that are expected to get hit, Aquino said. The effects of this storm can be eased through solidarity, he said. Earthquake survivors vulnerable. Authorities have warned dozens of provinces across the country to be prepared for possible flash floods and landslides. About 125,000 people nationwide were moved to evacuation centers. Some of the most vulnerable people are those living in temporary shelters on the central Philippine island of Bohol. Last month, a 7.1 magnitude earthquake hit the island, which lies close to the typhoon's predicted path. The quake killed at least 222 people, injured nearly 1,000, and displaced about 350,000 according to the authorities. This has been quake-hit area for the last 3 weeks. People are still experiencing aftershocks. said Aaron Ashby, a communications specialist in Bohol for the charity World Vision. And at the same time, these friends are giving them a really hard time. Most of them are advised to evacuate to sturdy structures, he said, but there are a few thousand displaced families in Quebec, his areas that are still staying in makeshift tents, and now that the super typhoon is here, it is really heartbreaking to see them struggling. As B said, many people's tents drenched, but they're still too afraid to relocate to enclosed structures because of the aftershocks. Beach resorts threatened. Another island in the storm's likely trajectory is the popular beach resort of Boracay. Some tourists there were cutting their vacations short to get away from the possible danger. Rose Evans, an aviation professional from Florida, said there was a definite urgency and panic among the long lines of holiday makers waiting for boats to get off Boracay on Thursday. Speaking by phone before his flight to Manila took off, he said he felt horrible for those who may end up stuck in the storm's path. Events say he and his travel companions who are leaving the Philippines 2 days earlier than planned feel very fortunate to have the ability to make arrangements to be safe. Situated near an area of the Pacific Ocean where tropical cyclones form, the Philippines regularly suffers severe storm damage. An average of 20 typhoons hit the archipelagic nation every year, and several of those cause serious damage. In December, Typhoon Beaufort wreaked widespread devastation on the southern Philippine island of Mindanao, the storm the most powerful to hit the country that year. It's estimated to have killed as many as 1,900 people. Feeling cramped? How to battle the shrinking airline seats. You are not imagining it. Airline seats are generally getting smaller, but while many airlines have been slimming down their seats over the last few decades, we've been bulking up. According to the World Health Organization, the global prevalence of obesity has doubled since 1980. Seats are getting smaller and smaller as airlines look to squeeze revenue from their economy seats. Nosringa Natarajan, the senior product manager at Seats Guru, a website that rates the best and worst seats on nearly every plane in the industry. In the 1960s, a seat width of 17 inches across was standard, and for a period in the 1990s and early 2000s, that grew to 18.5 inches with the introduction of the Boeing 777 and Airbus A380. Recently, however, airlines have been filling planes to a capacity that's Natarajan calls historic proportions. Airlines used to fly at 70% capacity. Now the number is closer to 80 to 85%, which means every middle seat is occupied, so the elbow room just isn't there, he says. Airbus view make them wider. To fit in the extra seats, passengers are now facing a width that is 17 inches and in some cases as narrow as 16 inches, a state of affairs that has pushed airline manufacturer Airbus to launch a new marketing campaign called It's the Seat. In a call to action to make 18 inches the industry standard, Airbus partnered with the London Sleep Centre. They tested a small sample of 6 adults and found passengers' sleep quality improved 53% in the larger seats. If the aviation industry doesn't take a stand right now, then we risk jeopardizing passenger comfort into 2045 and beyond, said Kevin Canson, Airbus head of passenger comfort in the company's press materials. People scoring proportions on the only issue, says Ruth Nye, Airbus spokesman. In the early days of jet travel, people were flying less frequently and over shorter distances. Also, due to a lower load factor, many had empty seats next to them, she says, adding that all of Airbus long-haul aircraft have been designed to accommodate 18-inch seats. Ask the airlines. Ultimately, though, seat proportions are dictated by the airlines, not the plane manufacturers. Unsurprisingly, Airbus competitor Boeing is impressed with their rivals' call to arms. Airlines ask us for the flexibility to offer a great experience for passengers in a way that makes economic sense for the airline and economic sense for their passengers, says Boeing spokesperson Kat Bergman. What they haven't asked for is an arbitrary, self-serving seats width standard. As for whether Airbus' campaign will make any difference in years to come, it's too early to tell, but many aren't convinced. The current trend will continue. Airlines will try to make the optimal use of the space available in an aircraft due to the fact that the competition is very strong, says Dr. Mark Hiller, Chief Executive Officer of Recaro Aircraft Seating, who adds that airlines haven't changed their orders, making less feel like more. In the past couple of years, Recaro has been charged with the difficult task of making seats that are both cramped and more comfortable. To achieve these effects, the company has slimmed down armrests to give more room for passengers' hips and repositions the literature pocket above the tray table to increase leg room. Mainly, though, Recaro has replaced traditional foam with a netting material that adheres more to the passenger's body. The result is that seats are thinner, so that even if pitch is reduced, it feels as if there's more leg room. What you can do, according to narration, the best way to act out some more space in the air is to do what the airlines are banking you to upgrade. Short of that, he notes airlines treat different model numbers differently, and it's worth looking up the model number and seat width on seat group before you book. We've seen complaints that a number of airlines have started putting 10 seats across on the 777. One customer wrote that he flew one leg of journey on the 777 in a 17-inch seat and flew back in an 18-inch on an A380. It felt like an upgrade, he wrote. Which city has the world's best taxis? For the sixth year in a row, the city's iconic black cabs were voted best in the world in the survey. More than 2,500 voters from 30 countries took part in the annual Global Taxi Survey, giving London 22% of the votes, well ahead of runners-up New York City by 10% and Tokyo by 9%. Rounding out the top 5, Berlin came in 4th place with 5% of the vote, while Madrid, Mexico City, and Amsterdam came in joint 5th with 4%. Of the 30 countries surveyed, London topped the list across 5 of the 7 categories, including cleanliness, knowledge of the area, and quality of driving. Almost a quarter of respondents voted safety as their #1 taxi priority, which London's cabs also ranks highest on. New York's yellow taxis grabbed the top spot for availability. New York and Bangkok taxis tied for first in terms of value for money by 20%. Despite this recognition, Thailand's capital failed to crack the top 5 this year. Survey categories ranked in order of preference by voters: safety by 23%, value by 20%, knowledge of area by 17%, availability 14%, quality of driving 11%, cleanliness 8%, and friendliness 7%. If any cabbies are reading, that suggests most travelers would prefer the drivers keep their mouths shut during the ride.